Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. It was October 10th and it would forever be known as the darkest day in the history of the ninja village of the Hidden Leaf. It was the day the dreaded nine-tailed fox demon attacked their land and their village. It was a huge monster. Its red chakra could be seen and felt by people over a mile away. The ninjas that survived the battle would still be able to tell how they could feel the intent of the giant fox demon, how it felt like a giant weight crushing them. But they had to protect their village and so they fought on. Many died in that battle. Attacks against the demon were brushed aside as though they were nothing. Scores of ninjas died when it counterattacked. It was a pure nightmare, that battle that night. Many thought that it was the end of things. That they would all die and then it would go on and attack their villaging everyone they held dear. But it was their leader, the fourth Hokage, a man named Minato Namikaze, that ended it all. There was only one thing he could do. At that moment he stood on the mountain looking over the battle. He held a small bundle in his arms. The man was tall with yellow spike hair and blue eyes as he looked on with a great sadness in his heart. The bundle in his arms moved and he looked down and smiled at the little boy that had just been born. "I'm sorry Naruto, I have no choice. I have to save the village and there is only one technique I know of that will do it." He smiled at the young boy and his heart broke knowing this was the only time he would ever hold his son like this. "You deserve more than this, my son. You deserve to live with your family." He closed his eyes. The mother of his child, Kushina Uzumaki, the greatest love of his life, had died in childbirth. She had suffered an injury in the attack and went into labor. But it was difficult and she had lost too much blood. All the medical nins were at the front line and so he had been there for his love before she had died with their son in her arms. He placed a tarp over her body. She was still back there in his personal quarters. He couldn't leave her side even at a time like this, but she was gone now and a large part of his heart went with her. They hadn't even been officially married since the damn council didn't approve of him marrying someone outside of their village. But he still loved her and she loved him. They had stayed together and had to keep his relationship a secret. Only a trusted few like his old sensei Jiraiya, his last student Kakashi, and the previous Hokage. But now he had to make yet another sacrifice. He had left a note for those closest to him in his chambers. And he had one on his persons just in case, but tonight was the night he knew he was going to die. There was an odd piece to it. In a way he would see his beloved again, but he didn't want to leave this life. He loved his village and the people and he wanted to see his son grow up. He felt the stings in his eyes as his tears started to fall, how he wanted to see little Naruto grow up. But he was Hokage. He had to protect the village and his duty outweighed what he wanted in life. He just hoped that Naruto would one day forgive him and understand why he had to leave him. He had left one of his tags he used for his flaying thunder god technique, something he used that teleported him around, the same technique that earned him the name the Yellow Flash. In an instant he was transported across the area. He could hear the battle going on as he appeared among his people. "Hokage!" A few cried out. "Keep the line. I want you to try and keep it still," he ordered out. Ninjas went out to surround the beast, which wasn't an easy task. He felt the presence of an old friend behind him. "So finally here, how is she?" He turned to see the toad sage Jiraiya there. He had arrived just in time to help things out. Next to him he could see Sarutobi with him. Even though retired as Hokage, the old man was still here in his black and gray battle armor fighting as well. There was no surprise in that, but they saw the look on the young man's face and both older men felt that something horrible happened. Subscribing to anime streaming services. "She's gone." It was the only thing he could say to them. Both men felt sorrow for him. They knew just how much he loved her and how much pain he had to be in. Then he surprised them both by smiling a little and turned to show them the bundle. "This is my son, Naruto." Sarutobi gave a small smile at the sight of the young boy. He already could see that the boy looked like his father. But Jiraiya frowned. He knew his student well and he knew that something was wrong. "Tell me, why did you bring your infant child here? What do you have planned?" The Hokage smiled, although there was no humor in it. "I knew you'd figured out I had something planned, old perv. There is a way to save the day, but I need my son's help." He reached into his clothing and pulled out a sealed letter. "Please come and find us when it's over, and you'll find another in my chamber. There is one of my son when he's old enough that I want him to read. Also tell Kakashi I'm sorry. He's lost so much and I hate for him to lose another precious person in his life." Jiraiya took the note with hard eyes. He knew what the boy had planned, or at least an idea. He didn't want him to go. Hell, he was an inch from beating the hell out of him and forcing him not to go. But before he could object, he was gone thanks to that damn technique of his. The older man looked at the letter and felt his sensei next to him. He looked at the older man's face and he could see that he knew as well. "I hate this," was the only thing the Toad Sage could say. "So do I," Sarutobi said to his old student. He wished Tsunade was here as well, but she had left the village and he wasn't sure where she was these days. It was only luck that Jiraiya had been wandering close enough to get here. Now he was seeing that young man go out there, and for the last time. If the night had been raining, it would have set the dark mood perfectly. Kakashi Hatake was a very young man and yet had already reached the level of Jonin. He had a large white hair that always seemed to stand up, defying gravity. He was sitting with his back to a tree, breathing hard. Not long ago the demon had been defeated. It was said that the fourth had arrived and somehow defeated it. He smiled at the thought of his sensei being able to defeat such a monster. He looked around with his one eye over the carnage. Bodies were everywhere. People cried out in pain, some as they were dying. Medical nins were doing their best, but there were just so many people injured and dying. Kakashi himself felt a few blows, nothing lethal, but he needed some rest. He wished he could block out the sounds though. He felt a split lip under his mask too. He sighed at that. It was one of the problems of always wearing a mask. He didn't have to, of course, but it was just his style. Hell, no one knew what he looked like since he had worn one as far back as people could remember. He looked again with his eye that wasn't covered by his headband over the field. There would be many people that would lose their precious people today. It reminded him of his own losses, his father who committed suicide to atone for his dishonor, his mother, and worse, his friends. First Obito, who died on his first mission in the war. He had lost his eye on that mission and Obito had asked Rin, their medic, to implant one of his into Kakashi. Then not long after, Rin was lost to him as well. It just seemed that everyone he loved or cared for was taken from him in life. The only one he had left really was his sensei, the new Hokage, and his wife. Well, technically not, but he knew that she was wife in everything but name. He was glad that his teacher and mentor had found a woman like her and were having a child soon. It seemed in even all this death there was at least something to look forward to. He had been so engrossed he actually missed the Anbu that landed next to him until he actually hit the ground. "Kakashi Hatake, you are to report to the Hokage Tower." "Oh man, I was just resting too," he grunted with the effort to get him. "Do you need assistance?" the masked ninja asked. Discovering martial arts cinema. "No, I'm fine. Just needed to catch my second wind is all." He waved it off as he made his way to the tower. It was a long way for him, but he eventually made it to the large building under the mountain with the faces of the Hokages on them. He climbed the steps, not surprised that there were no guards. Everyone had been pulled off their usual duties for the demon. He found the office of the Hokage and opened them up, but he was a bit confused to see not the Hokage but the previous Hokage there along with his sensei's teacher. Both of them had on looks on their faces that suddenly make Kakashi's stomach twist in on itself. Sarutobi-sama, Jiraiya-sama, I was expected Hokage-sama to be here, he said as he walked over to them. It was then he noticed that there was a sleeping form in Sarutobi's arms. I'm afraid that the Hokage. I'm sorry Kakashi, he's dead. Sarutobi hung his head. Kakashi felt like he was crushed under those boulders all over again on the mission that hated Obito. The last precious person he had in his life was gone. He felt hollow inside and very alone in the world. He hadn't felt like this since his father's death. He nearly fell to his knees, but he tried to keep on a brave face in front of his elders. But it was hard, so very hard. He just wanted to just sink to his knees and cry out his pain to the heavens. Why? Why him? Why must everyone I get close to die? He thought to himself and didn't notice how the old toad sage walked up to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. I know, boy, I know how you feel. I love the kid like a son, he deserved better than this. But it was his choice and the only way to stop the demon. Jiraiya told him. How? Kakashi asked, not looking at the older man. As far as we can tell, he used a forbidden art that sealed the demon into a host body. It will impression the demon for all time, but the cost to balance such a technique out requires the person performing it to sacrifice their own life. Sarutobi explained and walked over to the young man. This is Naruto, the Hokage's son. He used him to seal away the demon. He showed the snow-haired young man the child. Kakashi looked and he could see the resemblance. The yellow hair and blue eyes were very alike. Although it was strange seeing what looked like whisker marks on his face. The young boy looked up at him with curious blue eyes. Kakashi actually grinned a bit. His teacher would have been a great father and he knew that the man had been looking forward to this. But what of? He trailed off asking about the mother, but the looks he got told him all that he needed. I'm sorry, she died giving birth. When the demon attacked, she had been injured, and with the birth, it was just too much for her body. Jiraiya told him. There is a letter for you here. He made one out to you to read. Sarutobi pointed with a free hand to the desk. Kakashi walked slowly towards it. It was strange not seeing his sensei there behind the desk. Images came to his mind of seeing him there working, how he seemed to smile a lot at him, giving him his missions or just talking to him. He saw the picture there of him and his original team, and then of his sensei's team when he was a kid. He knew there was a picture of his lover in his desk drawer as well. It just seemed like a very bad dream, one that he wanted to wake up from. That he was still alive and he would see him tomorrow. But as he picked up the letter, he knew deep down that he was just being stupid. He was gone. He opened the letter and read what was on there. There is so much I could tell you. You were always the brightest student I had, and I know you'll do me and the village proud. In fact, I'm already very proud of you. You were like a son to me, just like how Obito and Rin were like my own children. When we lost them, I felt like I had failed as a teacher. I was always afraid that I would lose you next, but it seems that you'll outlive me after all. Sorry, stupid to make a joke here, but I had to do something to lighten the mood, right? Kakashi, I want you to know that I'll always watch over you, but I want you to do me a favor. Please, I trust you to keep an eye on my son Naruto. He'll have a large burden placed on him as the jailer for the demon, and I wanted him to be seen as a hero for his duty. Please watch over him from time to time. I think I can rest peacefully knowing that you will keep an eye out for him. I have to go, I can see that fox is already near the walls. Please live well, my student. Kakashi read it over a few times, trying to memorize each word into his mind. By the end, he felt the tears fall from his uncovered eye. He hung his head as he closed his eye, trying to not break down at the moment. Meanwhile, Sarutobi and Jiraiya were talking about what to do with Naruto. I'm not sure about this, Jiraiya said to his old mentor. I mean, you honestly want to tell the entire village that this boy holds the demon in his gut? He asked him. It was his wish, and he is the son of the Hokage. He said to his student. Look, I know you have faith in people and all, but look at what just happened out there. I honestly don't think people will react well to this. Hell, they might see the child as only a monster to beat. The Toad Sage. I do have faith in the people of this village. Like you did with Orochimaru, Jiraiya said coldly. Sarutobi's head came back as if he had been visibly struck. Then he cast his look down and Jiraiya knew he hit the right place to prove his point. Hell, Orochimaru had been his teammate as a kid. He had been the genius, Tsunade, the woman who was known as revolutionizing the medical ninja corps, and himself. Well, not the most well-known. He pulled his own weight as a master of seals. He had never really liked Orochimaru, and when he went bad it was no surprise to him, although he still felt betrayed. That bastard had experimented on his own people, the people he swore to protect, and when Sarutobi went after him, he had let him go in a moment of weakness. Sarutobi himself knew of that failure. He had honestly not seen the signs, although they had been there. He had seen how angry he had been when he hadn't named Orochimaru as Hokage after him. But he never thought that his own student would go to such evil lengths. Looking down at the child, he wondered if he was making another misjudgment. He should be put in a safe place. His father had lots of enemies and they would love nothing more than to his son. Maybe put him into an orphanage. With all the death out there, it could be easy to say that his parents were in the battle. Lord knows how man orphans were made today anyway. Jiraiya muttered to himself. No. Both men turned to see Kakashi looking at them. They had forgotten that the boy had been there the entire time. I'll take him in. Jiraiya was the first to object. What? Kid, you're still a kid yourself, you can't possible. I will, Kakashi said in an even tone. He is my sensei's son. He asked me to look out for him. He gave me so much in life, this is the least I can do to honor him. Kakashi meant his words. The little boy was the last living link to his sensei, someone who had been the only father figure in his life after his father's death. Looking after his son was the least he could do to honor the man, and besides, the thought of the Hokage's son living in some orphanage was not something he could bear. The boy deserved more than that, he was sure of it. Kid, this won't be easy. Plus, with taking care of him, how will you deal when you have to go on missions? Jiraiya asked him, crossing his arms. I'll do what I can, and I could leave him in the care of certain services if I need to take missions for cash, but I've saved up a lot besides what I have in my family holdings as well. The young man said. You really going to let this kid go through with this? Jiraiya asked the old Hokage. He looked down at the child who had fallen asleep, and then to the young man. He knew all too well of Kakashi's life story, and he was surprised the young man would take up such a responsibility. But maybe it would be better than just an orphanage for the young boy. There would already be too many children without parents tonight. Perhaps I could use you on the Anbu teams. I'll need more to fill in spots for at least a few years. It will keep you close, and although they don't have the pay for our S-class missions, they will afford you a bit of an easier time. Until that is Naruto is a bit older and you can go back to going out on missions. Sarutobi also knew that Kakashi was well on his way to Anbu anyway, but this would help in both matters. With so many of their own dead, their village would need more security in case other villages wanted to take advantage of it. Jiraiya gave a small grunt. No one was sure if he was for or against it, but it seemed like Kakashi wouldn't move on the subject. You truly do want to do this? Then you can try, but remember, this might be a lot more difficult than any ninja missions. He warned the young man. He still remembered how he had raised his own children, not to mention his estranged son. Kakashi nodded his head as he walked towards the young boy. He knew this would be tough, but he had to do this, if only in the memory of the Hokage, plus one day Naruto should know of the kind of man his father was. And he could always teach little Naruto the things he had been taught as well, passing on the knowledge from Naruto's father through him. Sarutobi slowly handed the small boy to Kakashi as he held him for the first time. Naruto moved a bit, opened his eyes for a moment and then went back to sleep. Kakashi looked at the young boy, and even though his heart was heavy and filled with the hole left in it, looking at the young boy filled him with something. In a way, a part of his teacher would live on in Naruto. Subscribing to anime streaming services. Well, now that's out of the way, what do we tell the council? This will get out eventually, you know. The Toad Sage asked his teacher. I'm not sure, maybe we can tell only the elders and keep it secret by law. Only people of Jordan or higher rank could know, but maybe keep it all secret, and the young boy's legacy and his task as jailer only to be known to us in this room and to him when the time is right. Sarutobi would have to think on this. The crying was the first thing that woke the tired Anbu ninja up. Kakashi groaned as he got up from his bed. He still had on most of his uniform. He had been so tired that he had just crashed onto his bed. Even his mask was still on, but then he usually slept with it on anyways. It was on for so long that sometimes he forgot to take it off when he showered. But now the crying of Naruto woke the young ninja up. He sighed as he rubbed his tired eye and went out from his room. He was still living in his apartment. It wasn't that big a place, but then again he hadn't needed a big place. Sure, he still had his parents' old house, but after what happened with his fathering himself, he just couldn't live there. Although he knew that when Naruto got bigger this place wouldn't be enough and he might have to move back, Kakashi knew he could always sell it, but it had been in his family for 2 generations. He made his way to Naruto's room. It had just been a small room that he used for storage, but he moved all that stuff out to make room for Naruto's crib and other things. He flicked on the light, blinded for a moment as the sting of the sudden light hit his eye. He blinked and saw the scene. The room was white, but he did plan on fixing it up a little with more color at some point. There was the crib, a changing table and a few other things. He walked over to Naruto's crib and looked down at the young boy. How can someone so small have such a powerful set of lungs? He asked himself as he picked up the crying infant. He rocked Naruto gently, trying to soothe him. It had been 3 months since that night he took Naruto in, and he hadn't had a decent night's sleep since. Sure, he had gone days without sleep on missions, but this took things to a whole new level. He swore they should let ninjas take care of infants for those sleep deprivation training. There. What is it, little guy? You hungry again? Kakashi couldn't believe how much the little guy ate. It was kind of unbelievable someone so small had such a stomach. He couldn't smell anything, thank goodness, so it wasn't for changing. He carried Naruto into the kitchen as he went to get a bottle. The little blonde boy was dressed in orange. For some reason he seemed to like the color. Kakashi always had trouble dressing him in other colors. He would throw fits for some reason unless it was orange. He got out a bottle from the fridge and used a small jutsu to heat it up. It was just a simple heating one used when you were stuck out in the cold. Mainly you used your chakra, the life energy that all ninjas train to use, to mainly make a blanket of warmth around you. He just used it on his hand until the bottle was nice and warm. He adjusted Naruto and the baby eagerly fed off the bottle. There you go, he said, gently closing the fridge with his foot and walking him around the apartment. He found out that this seemed to calm him down. Man, I know I said I'd look after you, but who knew this was so hard? Makes me glad for all those babysitting rank D missions I had as a kid. He shivered at the memories of those missions. They were not pleasant experiences, but he at least got something useful out of it, and he was putting all of that to work. Naruto eventually finished and Kakashi started to pat his back to burp him. He heard the sound and smiled but then froze, feeling something warm slithering on his shoulder. I forgot to put a tower on me again, didn't I? He asked little Naruto, who giggled. Kakashi knew that he had some spit up on his shoulder now. He had been tired and forgot to put that damn rag on now and then. He found something else out. Getting that stuff cleaned off a ninja uniform wasn't easy. He sighed and proceeded to walk around with Naruto a little, rocking him. It took nearly an hour for the boy to sleep. He had a lot of energy in him and he was always looking around the place. Anime and manga. Kakashi had to watch him as he liked to crawl and explore and usually get into trouble. Kakashi had to make sure that he kept all his weapons well out of the way. He had to stop Naruto from picking up and trying to play with a shuriken that he had dropped onto the floor at some point. It wasn't an easy life, that was sure, but he did it, plus he knew that the boy needed him as well. Who else would look after him? The new Hokage III, after taking back his title, had decided that only the council will know of Naruto and his past as well as the Anbu and Jonins. He still remembered that day as well. A week ago, Kakashi was holding Naruto as he walked into the Hokage's office. By now the entire village was slowly getting back on its feet. The dead had been buried and there was a mass funeral for everyone. He had been there with Naruto. It was only fitting, after all Naruto had lost his parents that night. Even if the child didn't really know it at the moment, or maybe he had, for some strange reason Naruto had been uncharacteristically quiet during the whole thing. Kakashi went into the office as the Hokage had told him to arrive. He walked in, seeing the third back behind the desk. He now wore the old robes he had used to wear before he had stepped down. The white robes with some red trimming, the large matching hat with the symbol of fire on the front of it. Hokage-sama. Kakashi bowed to him as much as he could. Ah, Kakashi, I'm glad to see you. How had Naruto been? The old man smiled at the little boy, who looked up at the strange old man. He reached up with one hand to the pipe that the old man was smoking. Hokage, if you'd please, he said, nodding his head to the pipe. The old man smiled and put it out. He had one given up on that with his own boys, but with them all grown up and moved out, he had taken it up again. Kakashi nodded his thanks. Well, Naruto is a handful, and I swear the amount of energy he has is frightening. I never knew a baby could wear you out so much so fast. The old man gave a small laugh, remember his own experiences when he was younger. Well, the reason I called you here was to tell you about my decision. I had to tell the council about Naruto, his full heritage as well as the demon sealed away inside of him. Kakashi sighed. Didn't go well, did it? No, it didn't. He rubbed his temples from the headache that he got from that. At least there were a few of the more reasonable ones. The Hyugas seem to be not opposed, but they aren't exactly happy about it, but they will not go against the wishes of the fourth. The Abarames are just as neutral, but I think they're just waiting to see how the boy is before they judge him. That he was thankful for. At least the Aburame clan kept their emotions tightly controlled, but they were very logical as well. Any others? Kakashi asked. A few of the less powerful members will not seem to cause any problems, but there is a large faction that feel that the boy is too dangerous to live. This was led by the current head of the Uchiha clan. But I gave a law that stated that they were not to discuss this outside of the council. This is an S-class secret punishable by death. So only the members of the council will know of Naruto and his secrets, only the new heads will be told, and of course all the Jonins and Anbu members. Kakashi nodded his head, listening to all of this. I have to wonder why you had to tell them at all. He would be much safer if no one knew. The Hokage nodded. I had considered that, but I also had to consider other things. What if the secret got out? The entire council would be after my head for keeping this from them. Also we also have to worry about what if one day the seal on Naruto breaks or someone tries to actually remove the damn thing off of him. Anime and manga. Kakashi hadn't thought of that, but then again why would anyone do something like that? No one would be that insane, would they? It would most likely Naruto if they broke the seal. Kakashi felt a bit more protective of the boy, wondering what such a thing would do to the little blonde boy. My old student, the one that taught your sensei. He's heard of things. Naruto is not the first of his kind. There have been others before, but mostly they had been either by the demons they hold or by others. The old man looked very serious in that moment as he looked at Kakashi. There have been whispers of something brewing, rumors mainly that he was a bit concerned over. There have been lately someone or more than one person looking into people like Naruto. Vessels for demons. In fact, an ancient scroll of such things was said to have been stolen recently from the village of Mist. So there could be a threat, but he's still looking into such things, as he is looking for other things that are of concern as well. Oh, what else is going on? Kakashi asked. You are aware of Orochimaru's new status as a missing nin, correct? He asked, and Kakashi nodded. Well, one girl Anko is missing. She was training under him and disappeared soon before we found out about what Orochimaru was doing. The old man sighed and closed his eyes, still remembering the horrors he had found in that basement room. To think one of his own students capable of such evil things, he felt like he had failed his student in some way. We are searching for her, but we don't know if she knew of his status when she left or not. So my other student Jiraiya is looking for leads for him as well. He leaned back into his chair feeling very tired. This year had been a very dark year, it seems. We will endure just as we always have, Hokage, Kakashi said honestly, and that made the old man smile just a bit. But I am worried that not everyone will obey your law about Naruto. Yes, they may find ways around it, but I felt you had to be told, just in case you need to be ready for anything. The Hokage said to him. Present. Kakashi was putting Naruto back into his crib after the baby had gone back to sleep. He pulled the orange blanket over the sleeping form and placed his favorite toy next to him, a small orange fox. He wasn't sure why Naruto had an affinity for the animal. Maybe on some level he knew about the demon fox within him, or maybe it was a slight influence from the demon itself. He hated that last thought. The boy was so innocent, and the thought of him being taken over by that monster actually scared him. Kakashi had lost too much to lose another, and in this time Naruto was becoming an important part of his life. He worried about the little boy, but when Naruto laughed or smiled, it actually made Kakashi happy. Happier than he had been in a while actually. Plus little Naruto had an infectious laugh. To think that people could hate such a baby was just stupid to him. He gently ran his hand over the blonde hair. I promise you I'll protect you, Naruto. Across the city, over in another district of the city, in a large area known as the Uchiha district, in the center of it was the main Uchiha home. This was where the main branch of the family resided. It was a very large estate on par only with that of the Hyugas, who were also the rivals of the Uchiha. In the main house, in one of the larger rooms lit by candles, sat many members of the council. At the head of the table was the leader of the Uchihas, Fugaku Uchiha. So we are all in agreement then? The head of the Uchihas asked those around him. He was a tall and powerful looking man. He didn't show emotion and looked to be the type to demand perfection from everyone around him, especially of his clan. He had gathered those that knew that the Hokage was a fool to allow the vessel of the demon to live on. It didn't matter if it was the will of the fourth to keep the boy alive, or even if he was his son. Personally, Fugaku never really thought much of the fourth Hokage anyway. He had seen that man before he became the legendary Yellow Flash, and he wasn't impressed with him then. So I was little consequence to him if the son of the last Hokage were or not. Although we can't take direct action, that doesn't mean that we can take overt actions. He looked at the faces around him, all had eyes of hatred in them. All of them had lost someone precious to them to the demon's attack, and it was a powerful motivation. What can we do then, Fugaku-sama? One of the men asked. We can't make it obvious, or else the Hokage would send the Anbu after whoever was behind things. Another said. Yes, we need someone to take the fall. Another agreed. Yes, we need to find someone with no affiliation that will the boy without hesitation, and if possible take their own life to prevent them from talking if captured. Fugaku said. But the problem is finding someone like that, plus with his new father around, it will make things even more hard. Yes, everyone knows of Kakashi, he even has your blood limit the Sharingan. One of the men stated. Fugaku slammed his hand hard into the table. Never speak of that in my presence. The fact that fool of a friend of his gave him the pride of my clan shames us all. To think that someone outside my clan uses the Sharingan is an everlasting insult to me. If that fool Obito was still alive, I'd him myself for what he did. But you raise a fine point. Kakashi is not to be taken lightly, and now he's an Anbu himself, so that makes things even more complicated. What do we do then? One of them asked. We wait. We find someone that we can use against the boy, but we also might have to wait until the boy is older. Kakashi is only an ANBU to stay close to the boy, but once he's old enough, I know that Kakashi would go back into the field. He's that kind of ninja, and he'll take on missions that will have him leave the village, and then we can easily strike at the demon boy. Fugaku said to them all. We shouldn't wait. He should be now. Someone spoke up. You fool, there is another reason to wait. He snapped at the man. The more time that goes by, the more relaxed security will be around the boy. Plus any accident that can happen to him would be more plausible. If something were to happen too soon, the Hokage would know that it had been set up to the boy. No, we wait for the time is right and then we will strike. Soon after that the meeting was over, but the leader of the Uchiha clan waited patiently. Then a door slid open and a young boy of about 5 with dark hair and matching eyes walked in. He held an impassive face just like the man across from him. What are your thoughts to this, Itachi? He asked the young man. I think it is wise to wait, father. He said calmly to his father. Although personally he didn't see the point in all of this just to a little boy. It was beneath his family to hide in the shadows like this and plot such a thing. They were the most powerful clan, and here they were acting like some weak and pathetic group of cowards. It sickened him to think that his proud clan would be reduced to such a state, but he showed nothing of this. His father nodded his head. I want you to keep an eye out in the ninja ranks for anyone we can use. Most likely when someone is given the level of Jonin and learns of the boy's true nature, we will find who we need. Itachi bowed his head. As you wish, father, but if you don't mind, I need to prepare. I have a test tomorrow and I wish to be ready for it. His father nodded his head and Itachi bowed as he left the room. He walked through the large mansion and heard the crying of his little brother. He passed an open door and saw his mother there picking up the newborn and trying to soothe him. Itachi knew that his father had rarely seen his little brother. That actually bothered him a little. He knew that his father saw that the firstborn son was the pride and future of the clan, but that was not necessary to ignore another. His little brother was an Uchiha after all, and he held hope that his little brother would prove to be strong like himself. But only time would tell of this, and he hoped that his little brother wouldn't disappoint him like so many of his clan had. He moved on silently as his thoughts turned back into his clan. He knew his clan was supposed to be the most powerful in the village and he was the pride of their clan, but the truth was he felt he was nowhere near his limit. He trained and pushed himself to new levels and always tried to reach the next level. His power with the Sharingan was matched with no one, and yet he still had not obtained its full power. He knew that there were untold of levels of strength and power for him, but he just needed to be shown how to get it. He gave a mental sigh as he got ready. He put those thoughts aside as he thought about his test in school, although he didn't know why bother. He was the best in his class after all. No one was even close to where he was in his skill or intelligence, just as it should be since he was an Uchiha. But still, there was no challenge for him there at the school, no one to push him to his limits or beyond. He needed to become the strongest there was in the clan, maybe even the world, but he was not finding anything to help him reach that goal here. Kakashi was sleeping in his bed when his alarm went off. He groaned and slammed a hand onto the evil device as he pushed the covers away. He yawned and reached for his mask, putting it on and getting up. He looked at the time and groaned. It was one of the things he hated about being an Anbu captain, and that was getting up early for team meetings and reports. If he had known that, he wouldn't have taken the promotion 2 years ago, but it offered him more time with Naruto and better pay. That was something he needed. Having a kid was expensive, that was for sure. Plus the fact that Naruto ate what seemed like his own body weight at times. Where it all went he had no idea. After showing and changing into his Anbu uniform, he looked in on Naruto's room. It had changed over the years. Gone now was the crib and other baby things. Now the room held a toy box, a bed and a nightstand with a lamp and clock next to it. There was a small shelf of books that he used to teach Naruto to read, but mainly for him to read to Naruto at night. It was strange how in the past 4 years he felt less and less like a guardian and more like a father. He had few memories of his own father, and the fourth was the next best thing he had, so he had been playing it mostly by ear. He had asked a few others in Anbu for advice who had children, and thank God for that, or else he would have been totally lost. But looking at the small boy who was sleeping soundly in his bed, holding the fox toy that he had as a baby, he couldn't help but smile. Unfortunately, it was breakfast time and he knew that Naruto could be hard to wake up, and the Hokage had a mission for him, so he wanted to say goodbye before he left. He left for the kitchen and cooked up some ramen. It was odd how Naruto loved the stuff. He had the same love for it as Kakashi had for his Ika, which he kept locked up so Naruto would never find them even if he was still learning to read. After the ramen was finished, he sat down and then took a breath. "Naruto, the ramen is ready," he called out. He raised a hand and ticked off 5 seconds with each finger. As soon as he made a fist meaning 0, Naruto burst into the room and jumped onto the chair, wide awake and still in his orange PJs. "Cool. Thanks, Daddy," he said, smiling happily as he dug into his food. Kakashi smiled behind his mask. Naruto had been calling him Daddy since he could talk, and in truth he liked it. Although Daddy had been his second word, his first was ramen, which he said for an entire day non-stop. So no wonder he loved that food. He watched as Naruto just inhaled his meal. "Naruto, I got to go to work today. You think you'll be okay for a bit? I have to arrange for someone to look after you before I leave," he told him. "'Kay Daddy, is it going to be Iruka again?" he asked. "We'll see, Naruto. Now finish up and wash up, okay?" The young genin named Iruka had taken care of Naruto a few times, but at the moment he wasn't sure. The Chunin exams were coming up and Iruka was going training since he was going to enter this year. It was nice, but he was one of the few people he trusted with Naruto. Over the years he had been aware of certain things when Naruto was alone out on the streets. Like potted plants would fall and he just managed to pull him out of the way of them, or a cart that just happened to lose control nearly crashing into him. One night he had known someone had snuck into his home, and looking around he found a few black widow spiders in Naruto's crib. They were random and spaced out, but he knew that someone or someones were targeting Naruto. He told the Hokage, of course, but the only thing he could do without evidence was to increase Anbu patrols around Naruto just in case. This of course lessened the accidents, but still they would happen. Some even Kakashi weren't sure if they were just accidents or if he was just getting paranoid. Anime and manga. After making sure Naruto would be okay for at least a few hours, he realized that he was running a bit late. He guessed he wouldn't be able to visit the memorial this morning again, so he just would when he got back. It was the least he could do to honor the memory of those that he cared for after all. He put on his Anbu mask, that of a wolf, and made his way to the Hokage's office. He found the man at his desk trying to once more at battle with his arch-nemesis, the dreaded paperwork. He smirked behind his mask, both of them actually, since he still had on his regular one under that. Well, three if you counted the other mask under his usual one he sometimes wore. Hey, sorry I'm late, Hokage-sama. An old lady needed help crossing the street, he said, taking off the wolf mask. The old man gave a grunt, trying to hide his smirk. Hitaki always seemed to have an excuse. Well, now that you're finally here, I have a mission for you and your squad. Tell me you remember Anko, right? Oh yeah, the girl Kai's team found, Kakashi said as he remembered her. She had been taken by Orochimaru a few years ago and after about a year turned up alone on a beach. She had been starving and dehydrated. In fact, if the Anbu team hadn't found her, she might have died after a few more days. She had been taken care of, but her memories had a lot of holes in them. She sometimes got flashes now and then of something, but nothing much beyond that. He also knew of her mark, the dark seal that Orochimaru put on her. Kakashi was learning about seals lately, and all Anbu were told of the seals and to keep an eye out for anyone else that had them. How is she doing these days? He asked him. Pretty good. He gave a small smile. That first year back was really hard on her, but she's turning out to be a great chunin. In fact, don't be surprised if in a year or so she makes Jonin. But she's also remembered something lately. She had another of her flashes, and I've been trying to help her remember. She thinks she remembers an area where Orochimaru might be or is. So you'll be taking her along to see if you can find anything. Kakashi nodded. Got it, but there is one other thing that I need help with. I need someone to look after Naruto, and well, I would like someone that can take care of himself. Lately I've been worried that someone is getting a bit more bold in harming him. The Hokage nodded his head. He heard everything Kakashi had told him, and it was worrying the old man. That was why he had looked up someone special for looking after Naruto. He was a bit unorthodox even by Konoha standards, but he was still one of their best. I already have someone planned for that. Guy, you can come in now, he called out. The doors opened and in walked in a Jonin with the usual vest, but he wore bright green spandex suit and had the strangest haircut. It looked like a bowl cut of some kind, as he had pure black hair. He grinned with unnatural white teeth. Kakashi thought he could actually see them shine when he smiled as he gave him a thumbs up. Anime and manga. Ah, so this is the mighty Kakashi, the famous copy ninja. The strange ninja said to him. I'm Meta Guy, sometimes referred to as the Green Beast. I'm sure you remember me, after all we were on a couple of missions together. Kakashi looked at him for a moment in silence in a thinking pose. Nope, never heard of you, and as odd as it is, I don't remember you either. Guy nearly face planted at that as Kakashi turned to the Hokage. Is he on any medication that I should be aware of? Not that we know of, the third said under his breath. Guy was right back up to his old self in a second, clapping a hand to Kakashi's back. Don't worry, your youthful child is in perfect hands. If anything happens, I'll do 1,000 laps around Konoha on my hands with weighs on my legs. He did the same, flashing grin and thumbs up again. Kakashi suddenly had a very strong sense of doom at the moment. Later, Kakashi was with Naruto as he was watching a kids program on the TV happily. Now Naruto, be good to Guy, okay? Okay, but can I get Iruka next time? I really like him, daddy, he said over his shoulder. Yeah, he's a good young man, but behave with Guy, okay? He said, knowing how Naruto could get, especially if he got too much sugar. The times he managed to eat too much of that even made him more hyperactive. It was insane how such a little boy could get that hyper. He swore with all that energy he could run up and down the Hokage monument several times before getting tired. "Daddy, how long will you be gone?" Naruto asked, a little worried. He hated it when his dad had to leave. He knew it was his job and all, but he didn't like it. His dad always knew what to do. He remembered when he was scared of the monster in his closet. His dad had come in asking him what was wrong and he told him about the monster. The next thing Naruto knew, his father threw several kunai into the closet in the blink of an eye. There now, Naruto, if the monster is still in there, he's not happy, and if he comes back, just remember, any monster that wants to harm you has to get through me first. After that, Naruto slept peacefully in his room, not afraid of any monster because he knew his daddy would protect him. So he always worried that something might happen when his dad was gone, but then again his dad was strong and brave and he wanted to be just like him. Kakashi thought about it. "I'm not sure, but I promise I'll hurry, okay?" "Okay, daddy." He smiled broadly at his dad and Kakashi couldn't help but smile back. The doorbell rang and Kakashi went to it. He opened it up to see Guy there giving one of those bright smiles. He pulled him in before he could start going on again about youth and stuff like that. "Now look'll be gone for a few days, so take good care of him. There's a list of things you should know on the fridge, and careful not to give him too much sugar, and you do remember what you were told about Naruto and what to watch out for, right?" Guy nodded, getting a bit more serious at that last part. He knew that certain people weren't too happy with Naruto and that anyone could be after him. He did honor the late Hokage's wishes, and besides, to him anyone that would harm a small boy was the more unyouthful people that deserved no respect from him. "No worries, Kakashi. I'll see to his safety and you can trust me." He flashed his grin and gave the thumbs up. Kakashi just sighed as he went to introduce Naruto to Guy. Outside his apartment, however, two shadowy figures were looming across the street. Both wore cloaks that hide the ninja garb under their vestments. They were a couple of missing outlaw ninjas that had turned from their village. They had been hired to sneak into this village to assassinate, of all things, a young boy. Even among missing nins, some still had some standards, but these two were not one of them. "What do you think, Ichigo?" his partner asked. "I think we should wait until Kakashi leaves Renji," he said to him. There was no way that they wanted to fight Sharingan Kakashi. When they were told who was protecting the boy, they found out the reason why they were being paid so much. Although their employer, whoever it was, had made sure there was a way in and out for them and that their mission was timed so that Kakashi was far enough away, it was still a little unsettling. They heard the stories and they didn't want to fight the Jonin, so they would wait until he was a long distance away. That way, if they were found out, at least they had a good head start in getting the hell out of there. Besides, the one in the green didn't look like that much of a threat anyway. "We wait and get ready. Ichigo, I want you to shadow them and take the boy out from a distance with your poison. I'll set up a backup plan just in case," Renji told his partner. After that, Kakashi left his home and made his way to the gate, hoping that he wasn't too late. When he got in range of the massive gate, he could see two of his fellow Anbu there, with a girl a little younger than he was, with purple hair pulled up at the back of her head. She was pretty looking, although the scowl on her face and how she looked a bit pissed sent him a few warning bells about her. "Damn it, where the hell is he? I thought Anbu were supposed to be the elite ninjas of this city, and you'd think your captain would be on time for once," Anko said, taping her foot. "Unfortunately, he's has trouble with the time apparently," one of the Anbu said. He knew all too well that their captain was always late. It was a running joke that Kakashi would be late for his own funeral one day. She then noticed an Anbu walking up towards them. She guessed this was the one they were waiting for. "Sorry about that. I got lost on the road to life," he simply said to them all. Anko raised an eyebrow. "Lost on the road of life? What the hell does that even mean? You got a lot of nerve, buddy, she growled out, getting into his face. The least you could do is show up on damn time, and I don't care if you are an Anbu, I'd still kick your. Duly noted, Kakashi said in a bored tone, although he could feel fear intent from the young woman. He made a mental note not to piss her off any further, or he'd have to see just how good she really was. Fine then, let's go before I forget anything important, she said, and Kakashi noticed the slightly more serious and darker look on her face. He had no idea what it had to be like living with giant holes in your memory, although sometimes he wondered if he would be better forgetting certain things as well. Hitaki residence. Guy was one of the strongest ninjas there was. He had the patience of a mountain, strong like an oak tree. He had seen hundreds of battles, seen a lot in his young life, but at the moment he was wondering if he could handle such a thing as a hyperactive 4-year-old. Hey, why do you wear green? Why is your hair like that? What are those big things over your eyes? Do you know my daddy? He's the strongest and bestest there is, and I'm going to be just like him. Are you strong? Can you show me? Can you, mister? What was your name again, mister? All of this within seconds came from young Naruto. Guy had to admit the flames of youth in this boy was like a blazing inferno. He had never seen a child with so much potential energy. Oh Kakashi, you have a fine boy. The flames burn brightly in him. I hope to one day I too will find a boy with flames that match him. He would make the perfect student. He grinned at the boy, and Naruto was surprised by how shiny the tall man's teeth were. I'm made a Guy, little Naruto-kun, but you can call me Guy, he said to him. Okay. Naruto grinned at the tall man. So Naruto, what do you want to do? Play ninja. Naruto suddenly ran off, leaving Guy to search for him. For such a small child he was fast, and Guy went into Naruto's room but couldn't see him anywhere. Guy was surprised that he could hide so fast, but then again he knew the home better than he did. Guy went around searching the room. He opened the closet but only saw a mess in there. Nothing but what looked like a pile of laundry that hadn't been cleaned yet. Guy sighed at such a sight. He would have thought Kakashi would have taught young Naruto better than that. He shook his head and went searching for the young boy. He looked in a toy chest with no luck, then he knelt down to check under the bed. Anime and manga. That was when his sense of danger hit him. Like all experienced ninjas, they had learned to trust their gut when someone was watching or about to attack. He heard the feet running and turned just in time to catch the little blonde boy as he jumped at the man. He launched himself into Guy's chest as he caught the giggling boy. I got ya, he shouted out, and Guy looked across, seeing the disturbed pile of clothing. He smirked, knowing now that the boy had used that to hide himself. Guy had to admit the boy showed some talent, at least for surprises. He got up and placed Naruto on the ground as the young boy gave him a huge fox-like smile. Guy couldn't help but like the kid. He was full of the fires of youth. Well, my youthful young man, what happens now that you got me? Guy asked. It's your turn to hide now. Then prepare yourself. Guy decided to show off a bit and threw down a smoke bomb. Naruto looked with wide eyes as the smoke cleared and Guy was gone. Then he grinned as he started running around looking for him. He ran out of the room, and Guy, who was on the ceiling, smiled down at him. He was using his chakra to stick himself to the ceiling, and when Naruto left, simply and silently landed. He turned around, going into a thinking pose, as he thought about Naruto. He had heard how the great Kakashi had taken in the child, and he had to admit he had been surprised. He never pictured Kakashi as the family type. But he seemed to be doing a good job, although Naruto could be a bit more tidy, but maybe he was expecting a bit much from a 4-year-old. He wondered what Naruto would be like when he started his training. That was when he felt a small body wrap around his leg. Got ya again. Guy was walking down the streets of the village, watching with a smile as Naruto was running around full of energy. He also noticed a few other things. Most people would smile at the little boy, but Guy caught a few glares at the boy. He knew full well of Naruto's little guest inside of the boy, but apparently word was getting around slowly about it. Guy honestly couldn't see why you could hate such a child, but maybe the few of the elders on the council that had spoken of Naruto could have embellished certain details. Meaning that they played up the demon role to the point that anyone would mistrust the boy. Even he had heard rumors of things such as a demon child that was around. They never mentioned Naruto by name, but there were things such as the child having whisker marks. In a way, they were getting around the Hokage's rule with not mentioning Naruto by name, but still this was something that would only harm the boy. Thankfully Naruto didn't notice this, as he was too happy with the thought of ramen. Guy kept a lookout for any troublemakers, that is, besides the two shadowy figures he sensed that were following them. Ninjas on the rooftops was a normal thing, but after they had left Kakashi's, he thought he felt a presence following them. As they walked on, he kept an eye out and found not one but two. They weren't bad either. They weren't a Jonin like he was most likely a high Chunin level of ninja. He couldn't turn his head to get a good look at them without giving away that he knew. So he kept an eye on them at any rate. He also continued to watch in amusement to how Naruto ran around with that huge smile on his face. "Naruto, here we are," he said, and he led the boy under a tarp with a sign over it that read Ichiraku Ramen. "Hey there, Ichiraku." A man with an apron who was working the hot stove looked over his shoulder. "Ah, Guy, what are you doing here this fine day? And who is the little one?" he asked, looking at Naruto. Naruto had to go on his tiptoes and pulled himself up just to look over the counter. He could smell ramen from here, and he looked like a predator ready to eat its prey at all the ramen. Guy smiled and ruffled his hair. "This is Naruto Hatake, and I'm taking care of him while his father is on a mission. And he seems to like ramen, and you make the best in the city." "You got that right," he said with pride. "Dad, where is that extra stack of noodles?" Ayame, the young teenage daughter, walked in. "I think under the counter, dear." "Okay." Then she turned to see a small blonde boy trying to get onto the stool. He obviously was having trouble. "Ah, who's the little cutie?" Guy picked up Naruto and placed him on the stool. "Naruto," he said happily, wondering where his ramen was. "He's so cute," she gushed at the little boy. He had these cute little marks and these beautiful blue eyes. She couldn't remember ever seeing anyone with eyes like his before. "So what do you want, little man?" "Ramen, please." "What kind?" she asked. Naruto thought about it. He wasn't sure he liked all types of ramen. Well, not vegetarian for some reason. So he crossed his arms, looking deep in thought. Then he suddenly got an idea. "All of it." Naruto went back to waiting for his ramen. The little boy was almost bouncing in his seat in anticipation. Guy had to smile at the little boy's actions and went outside. Up on the building, one of the ninjas were already lining up a shot. Ichigo took out a long tube that he had hidden under his cloak and pulled out a dart. There was enough poison on the dart to an elephant, more than enough to take out a small boy within a second. He waited for the boy to finish. The damn flaps were in the way, so he'd have to wait until the boy was out from the cover. "I wonder what's so special about him. Oh well, most likely just someone wanting to settle a score against Kakashi," he muttered to himself. He was thankful that the other guy left just for some reason. He watched and waited. Dynamic entry. Dynamic WHOW. Ichigo turned to the sound of the strange battle cry to get a foot planted into his face. He was surprised by the hit as it sent him flying through the air. He bounced a few times over the roof and nearly went over the edge. He quickly managed to stop himself and frantically pulled himself up, his heart racing from his near-fatal fall. He looked up to see that strange green ninja standing there. "What the hell? I figured you were up to no good," Guy said with a more serious look on his face. The ninja had lost the hood and he could see the young man with blue spiky hair and gray eyes. He didn't know the ninja from the bingo books, so he must either be new or just not that good. You knew. Ichigo couldn't believe that he had been found out. He figured he had shadowed the two of them perfectly. Of course I am Guy Maeda, the green beast of Konoha. The power of youth burns in me with the intensity of 1,000 suns. He struck out a pose. Ichigo's sweat dropped at this. This is the guy that got the drop on me. Renji will never let me live this down. Ichigo stood up. Okay then, weirdo, take this. The threw out a few kunai and the guy just vanished. What the? Was that just an illusion? A powerful blow to the back of his head told him otherwise. Once more he was sent flying and landed hard on the road. He looked to see the green ninja was behind him. He honestly didn't know how he had managed that, but he formed a few hand seals. Water technique. Rapid fire. Out of his mouth many small but fast-moving pieces of water shot out at Guy. The water shots were formed into blades and Guy noticed that when one hit the roof it actually cut into it. He knew that water at super pressure would cut through things like a blade, and so he quickly dodged the shots. His speed was so fast that Ichigo could barely even follow, and when the attack ended Guy was right in front of him, and landed a blow to his gut that felt like a sledgehammer hit him. He felt ribs break and fell to the ground holding his chest, gasping for air. Guy lifted him up to face him. Now then, who sent you to attack Naruto-kun? Don't know his name, was through AM middleman. Oh god, I think my lung is punctured. He managed to get out. Screaming was heard and Guy left the man there. He wasn't going anywhere, and if he was it wouldn't be far anyway. He caught sight of another ninja running off with Naruto. Damn, so there was the other one I sense. He felt foolish for forgetting the other one. If anything happened to Naruto he would never forgive himself, plus he was sure Kakashi would him. Anime and manga. Naruto didn't know what had happened. One moment he was eating another bowl, his fourth, of the best ramen he ever had, when some strange and scary ninja grabbed him. He tried to struggle, but the man was too big and strong and his grip was hurting him. Damn brat. This was supposed to be an easy gig and now I may have just lost my partner. Well, more money for me, but I'm going to skin you alive for the trouble you've caused as soon as I lose the other guy. He said in a deep and cold voice. Naruto had never been so scared in his life. He wanted his daddy to be here. He always protected him, and Naruto started to cry. Shut the hell up. He hit Naruto on the head with his free hand. I'll give you something to cry about soon enough. Naruto whimpered as the man hit him and tried not to cry. Although he hoped that his daddy would come soon to save him. After a while they came to one of the forest training grounds. Renji figured he had managed to lose the other guy by now. He threw Naruto against a tree and Naruto whimpered in pain with tear-filled eyes. He looked up at the man with long blood-red hair and dark eyes. There were some purple tattoos on his face, and when the man was snarling at him he could see a missing tooth. Brad, normally I'm all business, but you've pissed me off. He drew a large-looking curved knife. I'm going to enjoy this. Naruto closed his eyes, feeling the tears fall. He waited for the man to get over to him. It was like an eternity waiting for the man to him. He felt the pain of his body and wondered if it would hurt worse than this. Dynamic entry. Naruto's eyes snapped open as the bad man was dropped, kicked out of nowhere by Guy. Naruto watched with wide eyes as Guy went on to fight the ninja. He moved very fast and the bad ninja tried to attack him with the knife. Guy dodged a bit to the right, making the blade pass through where his head had just been. Now, while inside his opponent's personal space, he gripped the wrist. He twisted, making his enemy cry out in pain, dropping the weapon. Guy gave a palm strike to the man's chest, sending him back. I have no idea what kind of person would harm a little innocent child, but you are definitely a very unyouthful person. Childcare. The other ninja didn't bother to say anything. He made a few hand signs and then slammed his hands together. Guy saw an electrical current running over the hands as his foe charged forward trying to strike at Guy. Guy could feel the electrical energy coming off the hands even when they weren't touching his body. He could feel the hairs on his body stand up, and he knew that getting hit by just one of those wouldn't be a good thing for him. A glancing blow to his arm was proof as he cried out in pain and felt his arm got slightly numb. The assault continued, but Guy managed to keep one step ahead of the larger and thankfully slower enemy. The man was getting very frustrated with this. He went for a large right hook and Guy jumped up and over with a flip. As he was in mid-air, Guy sent the back of the heel of his fight foot into the back of the man's skull. The blow was enough to daze him, and when he turned around feeling the world spinning, he got one of Guy's feet to his face. He flew through the air and landed, and didn't get back up. Naruto had watched if all with wide childlike eyes. He had never actually seen ninjas battle before, and he had to admit, he thought Guy had to be almost as strong as his dad. Anbu team. Kakashi and his squad had been traveling for days as they were on their way to one of Orochimaru's possible hideouts. The man was a missing nin to beat on sight, but so far he had always remained several steps ahead of the Leaf Village. It was their hope that he was using the old base of his again, or there were clues to where he was going. Kakashi was thinking about what they would do if they faced him. He was good, but he couldn't take on one of the legendary Sannin. He glanced at the young girl to his right as they made their way through the trees. She seemed to really want to find her old sensei. Although from their intent he felt her trying to repress, it wasn't for a happy reunion and most likely wanted to rip him a new one. He hoped she could control herself, since going into a battle with emotions like that would get her, and others said. Then again, going into a mission with just logic wasn't the right way either. He remembered how he had focused only on the mission while Obito had gone after Rin. He still wished he could redo that day over again. Maybe they both would be alive today. Kakashi pushed those thoughts away. They were on a mission and he had to keep focus. After a bit, Kakashi stopped. I think we traveled far enough. I think we need to rest for a bit. The others looked a bit winded, although Anko looked like she wanted to keep on going. We can be there in a few more hours, she told him. Yes, but it's getting dark and I don't want to travel into a possible enemy stronghold at night, with who knows what traps along the way. Besides, we're tired, hungry, and we're not at 100%, he told her in his usual lazy tone. She seemed like she wanted to argue the point, but she seemed to take a moment and jumped down from the tree, still pissed but seemed to relent. He looked at his two other members of his team. Women, huh? He said as a joke. The other two shook their heads and jumped down. They set up a small camp with everyone taking turns at watch. Kakashi took the first watch as he pulled off his mask and sat down on a stone resting. He looked up the stars and his thoughts turned to Naruto and hoping that Guy was taking good care of him. Because if he didn't, he was going to use his Sharingan on the green ninja. He sighed and pulled out his favorite orange book and started to read it. It was hard to find time and places to read his favorite series with Naruto around. About an hour into his watch, he heard some moaning and then a small gasp. He looked at the tents and after a bit Anko came out looking like she had a rough night, and from the looks and sounds of it, a nightmare too. He also was surprised to see her hair down. She looked more feminine like that, more soft in a way. Or it might be the lost look on her face as she sat down across the fire staring into it. Can't sleep, huh? He said, not looking up from his book. She just shrugged and muttered something he didn't hear. He thought about what could cause the girl nightmares, but given their lives it was part of the job. It's bad enough living with it when we're awake, but it's when we fall asleep, the point we let our guards down and want nothing but peace that it seems to attack, he said. She looked at him confused. What? Our kind of life is a hard one, we see a lot and experience more than most. When we're awake, we try and bury what has harmed us, but when we're asleep, that's when it can attack us at any time. She gave a small grunt looking at the strange Anbu. She was trying to figure this guy out. He didn't look much older than she was, although she was wondering why he was wearing that black mask when he wore that wolf one. Plus his forehead protector was covering one of his eyes, but from the small scar she saw, Anko figured he might be missing an eye. I don't need anyone's pity, she told him sternly. Wasn't offering. Then what? Understanding. That threw her for a bit. She had seen the looks about her when she first got back. She hated pity. She wasn't some weak little girl and hated it when people acted like she was around her. What would you know about anything? She muttered. I know loss and loneliness. She cast him a look. How so? Kakashi sighed, trying to concentrate on his book, but the memories that were coming up weren't easy. I lost my parents when I was young. My fathered himself in shame. My only 2 friends are dead. My sensei, who was like a father to me, is dead. All my precious people are gone except for one, and I don't ever want to lose him. Anime and manga. Anko didn't know what to say to that. Her parents had died when she was young on missions. She really didn't have many friends. Although this Kurenai woman she had been teamed up with for her Chunin exam was nice and the only person she kept in touch with. But by the sounds of it, this guy had a rough life. Maybe that was why he hid his face from the world. So who is this person? My son, he told her. You got a kid, but you don't look that much older than I do, she said, shocked. Adopted. He lost his parents the night the 9 tails attacked. I know what it's like to grow up alone, so I took him in. At first I was more like a guardian, but over the years, I think of him more like my own son now. Kakashi meant the words. Naruto was the most precious person in the world to him, he had no doubt about it. Anko didn't know what else to say, so she just looked into the fire. After a moment she looked at him reading one of those adult books that she had heard about. She was surprised he was reading that. Please tell me you don't keep those in your home, she smirked, pointing at the book. It's perfectly good literature. He ignored her snort at that comment. Besides, I lock them up so he never finds them. Anko actually broke a small smile at that. You're a strange one. You know I don't even know your name. Kakashi, he said, looking at her with a small smile. Normally Anbu don't just throw out their names, kind of defeats the purpose of the masks, but he didn't mind. The name registered in Anko's mind as her eyes widened. She knew only on ninja named Kakashi that was said to hide his face from the world, and by the fact he was covering one of his eyes only led to one conclusion: Sharingan Kakashi, the copy nin. He sighed at that. He really didn't like having a large reputation. It wasn't ego, it was just the way people acted around him because of it. He had enough of that as a child, being the son of the White Fang, as a kid. Odd how no one even remembered that old name these days, they just focused on what he had done. It nearly made him laugh too. As a kid he vowed to get out of his father's shadow, and he had. Barely anyone remembered the White Fang, which kind of hurt. He loved his father, and although many thought of the end of his father's life was a big disgrace, he deserved better than to be forgotten. Anko meanwhile shook her head as she looked up into the night sky. So here she was with the famous copy nin of their village. She had heard how some younger kunoichi talk about him, or maybe swoon over him. Everyone wondered what was under that mask, and others thought he was so mysterious and tried to figure him out. It nearly made Anko laugh at how here she was with him and had most likely just learned more about him than any of those so-called fangirls learned in years. She looked at the man, trying to wonder how he was raising a son all his own. Since he never mentioned a woman in his life, she guessed he was single. At least that was something those girls would be pleased to hear. Hell, even Kurenai had gossiped about him a few times. At any rate, when she got back, she could have some fun with this. There was all kinds of women that would pay to learn anything about him. She smiled, her nightmare forgotten, and then she frowned, glancing at him. Did he plan on making her better? He just sat there reading one of those books, looking dead to the world. She figured he didn't plan anything and decided to try and get some more sleep. Kakashi, however, watched her from the corner of his eye and smiled. He was glad that he could help her out. There was just something about her, that pain of being totally alone in life, that made him want to help her. Maybe because it was Naruto that helped to fill the void in his life, so he wanted to help others who had that same pain. At any rate, he went back to his book. It was getting to a good point and he wanted to finish before his shift ended. Konoha. Naruto was back in bed. He was still scared to death from that morning, but he was better now that Guy was looking after him. He was holding Mr. Foxy, his favorite toy, the orange fox, in a death grip to his chest. Guy was there in the doorway looking at the young boy. He had been so full of life that morning, and looking at him now was depressing. The two ninjas had been captured and sent to interrogation, although he bet that whoever was behind this was already covering their tracks. If the middle man was still alive, he wouldn't be much longer. That person was a loose thread. But this had been the first out in the open assassination attempt of Naruto. Whoever was behind this was getting bolder. Guy felt like he personally wanted to punch the man or men behind this until they couldn't be identified. He had only known Naruto for a day, and yet he liked the boy, and looking at him now made him sad and angry. Normally he let things slide, never one to let things bother him that much, but at times like these, they were the exception. He walked into the room and sat down next to Naruto. "Are you okay? When is Daddy coming back?" he asked him. "Not until a few more days or more." He saw how Naruto held his toy even closer. "But don't worry, I'm here. No one will harm you as long as Guy Maeda is protecting you, Naruto-kun. I promise you this, or I'll do 5,000 push-ups with lead weights on my back." Of course. He flashed a grin at him. "Cool. You must be almost as strong as Daddy." "Well, I like to think I can rival him. I may be even stronger." My daddy is the strongest ninja there is." "Martial arts. Well, technically the Hokage is the strongest ninja in the village." "You mean the old man with the robes and funny hat?" Naruto had seen him a few times. In fact, he visited Naruto a couple of times a month. He found it strange that he was stronger than his dad. The Hokage is the strongest in the village, and for a good reason. He protects everyone in the village, Naruto. It's his duty to protect everyone under his care, so he has to be strong. Naruto thought about that. He wanted to be as strong as his dad. He wanted to be able to be a great ninja as well. But if the old man was the strongest, then maybe he should be even stronger than him. Stronger than anyone, so that he could protect his daddy. He knew that his dad went off on dangerous missions all the time and he always worried, but if he was stronger, then he could look out for his dad. Little did anyone know that night Naruto made a new decision in life that would shape his future and the rest of Konoha. Guy ruffled his hair. "Get some sleep, Naruto, I'll be right here." Naruto nodded his head, feeling a bit better. "Thanks, Unka Guy." It had been a couple of weeks and Kakashi finally managed to return home. They had finally found that base that Anko had remembered. The only problem, no one had been there for at least 3 months, if not more. Basically, Anko was pissed the entire trip back, and after all of that, Kakashi was looking forward to getting back home and checking in on Naruto. He opened the door to his apartment, feeling better just stepping inside of the door. "Ah, Kakashi, you have finally returned," a very loud voice said, and Kakashi sighed. He had forgotten about him. "Hey there, Guy, was it? How was Naruto? Any problems?" He caught the look in Guy's face and decided to sit down for this one. Guy filled him in on the two ninjas that had attacked Naruto. Kakashi knew that something like this might happen. The only problem was that he had hoped to have been there for him. He heard how the two ninjas were executed, although their contact was never found. It was hearing this that Kakashi was thinking of starting Naruto on his ninja training at the moment. Naruto needed to be able to protect himself, as it clearly showed that he wouldn't be around to protect Naruto all the time. He had to make sure that Naruto could be able to defend himself when the time came. "Thank you, Guy. Thank you for keeping Naruto safe," he finally said to him. Guy grinned at him. It was no trouble at all. Although he was scared by the ordeal, he seems to have come around. Kakashi was glad to hear it. "So where is he?" "Naruto, your father is home," he called out, and what came out would be something that gave Kakashi nightmares for 2 months. Naruto ran out dressed in a neon green one-piece suit just like Guy's. He stood beside Guy, giving a grind and a thumbs up at his father. Kakashi's only visible eye twitched at the horror before him. He was hoping that he was asleep or caught in a genjutsu. "Daddy, you're back," Naruto said happily. Kakashi was too tired, and too sore to move, plus there was the shock to his system. On the one hand, he wanted to thank Guy for saving his son, on the other he wanted to him in ways that would make the most diehard Anbu throw up. So he would form a compromise. He would give Guy a 15-minute head start before he hunted him down. Naruto was in training gear as he practiced another attack combo on a training dummy. He had been at it for a couple of hours now and he was tiring. Kakashi watched on as he pointed out flaws in Naruto's stance or movements. Things had changed a bit for them in that year. They have moved out of the apartment and Kakashi went back to his family home. It was a modest place, but it had a very large backyard with a high brick wall that fenced out the home. It was so strange being back here. The place had to be cleaned up when he got there, and he started to tidy the place up when he moved back in. He remembered all the memories of this place, all those long forgotten things that came rushing back. How his mother would be cooking in the morning, how his father would train him like he was doing with Naruto now. The only thing that had been a major problem had been that one room, the room that his father had taken his own life in. For months he couldn't face that room. But in the end he figured if he had to live in this place he would do something about it. It had been a large tea room, but he turned it into a training room. The room was so different now that he sometimes forgot what had happened in it. Naruto of course had loved the new home. He spent all week running around, playing everywhere, and loved the large yard. There was a few trees and he kept on trying to climb them. He kept falling, but he only dusted himself off and tried again. It was like he refused to ever let anything beat him, something Kakashi knew he got from his biological father. Anime and manga. For that year he also started Naruto on his training. He was only focusing on physical skills at the moment. When he was a bit older he would train Naruto in chakra. He still went on mission, and apparently Naruto had taken a liking to his Uncle Guy, although Kakashi refused to let him be alone with Naruto for more than a week. It had taken Kakashi over a week to unbrainwash him from Guy's influence that first time. Iruka still helped out as well, and Naruto at least had someone to play with at times thanks to young boy. Although Naruto had trouble making some friends, sometimes other kids would bully him or pick on him, others would just ignore him. Kakashi knew that the kids were most likely told this by their parents, who were in turn warned about Naruto by certain members of the council. Kakashi really wanted to shove a kunai into those men, but he knew that technically they hadn't broken any laws. He just hated how Naruto would look so lonely at times when he thought no one was looking. Kakashi was brought out of his memories seeing Naruto panting and sweating and figured it was enough for the day. "Okay Naruto, good work. I want you to shower and change, and for doing such a good job, I'm taking you to the park today." "Really? Cool. Thanks Dad." He ran off suddenly, filled with new energy. Kakashi smiled behind his mask at the boy's antics. Meanwhile, across the city at the same park that a lot of families brought their children to, another parent was with her own daughter that day. The young Hinata Hyuga had been taken to the park by her mother this day. The young girl was never very good with other people. Unlike the rest of her clan, she was always shy around others, even the other children of the branch family. But because she was of the main house, the children were wary of playing with her, so she was left alone a lot. Thankfully, her mother noticed this and took her out with other children now and then. The only problem was Hinata was too shy to go up most of the time. She would play by herself at times, wishing she could just go up to someone making a friend. At the moment, she was watching a group of kids play and she wanted to join in, but she was too afraid. What if they didn't like her? What if she said something stupid and they made fun of her? What if she wasn't any good and they didn't want her to play? Thoughts like this plagued her entire life as far back as she could tell. So she sat with her mother, who was worried about her daughter. Hana Hyuga had hoped that getting away from the clan home would help her daughter be more open, but she seemed to be having some trouble here as well. She knew that her daughter was a very kind girl and would make lots of friends if only she wasn't so shy. Honestly, she didn't know where she got it from, or why she was like that. She knew that her husband was worried as well, especially if the clan elders thought that their daughter wasn't good enough to be the heir and maybe another member of the family should take the role. She knew that her husband never liked the cage bird technique used on the rest of the family and certainly didn't want them to bear it like his twin brother and his family had to. She stood up and Hinata did the same without a word. Why don't we get something to drink? They walked on and she noticed a tall man with large silver hair with a small blonde boy. It was a bit odd. The man had a mask on despite him being in more casual wear and had a headband over his eye. The boy had blonde hair and strange markings on his face, with a black shirt with an orange swirl pattern on them. Dad, after this, can you teach me more cool ninja stuff? The boy asked excitedly. Martial arts films. His father sighed. Yes, I swear Naruto, for a boy your age you seem to like training. Most kids want to play instead. Well, I don't really got many friends, he said, and suddenly his face took on a sad look. It was then that Hana knew the couple. By now the entire Hyuga clan knew of Naruto Hatake and his role as the prison for the nine-tailed demon. However, it was never spoke outside of the clan as per the law, and the children were never told. Although she had overheard a few of the branch family members expressing concern for the safety of their children. Personally, she wasn't sure what to think, and maybe it was time for her to find out for herself what this Naruto was like. After all, he seemed nice enough as it was. She walked up to them and Kakashi noticed a Hyuga woman walking towards them. Everyone knew a Hyuga when they saw them. The pearl eyes were a dead giveaway, plus they always carried themselves with this type of elegance. She wore a blue and very expensive kimono, had long dark hair and a very beautiful features, and it soon came to him who exactly it was. Good morning, Hyuga-sama, Kakashi said with a slight nod of his head. Good morning to you, Hatake-san, she said politely. Please drop the san. I never liked that stuff anyway. He waved it off. She looked at him. Everyone knew the legendary copy ninja, but she had expected a bit more. He was way too relaxed and seemed bored. He didn't carry himself like a warrior, and you'd never know he was with the way he talked. Naruto looked up at the lady. She seemed kind of pretty, but then he noticed something else. There was a small motion behind the lady and Naruto went to look. He walked around her to see a small girl roughly his age with short dark hair hiding behind the lady. Hey, what's your name? He asked. The girl made an eep sound and clutched her mother but looked at who asked. She looked to see a boy with golden hair and blue eyes looking at her confused. Hinata wasn't sure what to do. The boy had asked her a question and it was rude not to say anything, but she couldn't seem to find her voice. Her name is Hinata. Now introduce yourself, her mother said softly. The girl released her mother's clothing and her cheeks flushed a bit. She fiddled with her fingers looking down a bit. My name is Hinata Hyuga. The boy only smiled at her. I'm Naruto, you want to go play? Hinata looked up both shocked and surprised. No one had asked her to play before, but he seemed to want to. She looked up at her mother and she could see the woman smile and nod at her. Hinata gave a small smile and nodded. Cool. Let's go play. He grabbed her hand and quickly led her away as she blushed a bit. You don't mind Naruto playing with her? Kakashi asked, watching the children. No. He seems like a nice boy and my daughter has trouble with making friends. She said, a small smile on her lips, seeing her daughter play with another child like a normal child should. Kakashi nodded his head. Naruto has the same, but for other reasons, I'm afraid. I think Hinata is the only child that agreed to play with him like this before. Anime and manga. Then maybe they'll be good for each other, she said, watching. Naruto couldn't help but be happy. For the first time ever he had someone to play with. Sure, she was kind of strange. Her cheeks were red a lot. She had eyes like she had never seen before. They were all pale and with no iris in them. She talked kind of funny, but she seemed really nice. They started to play on the slides in Jungle Gym. He helped her out here and there, and then they got to something he always wanted to try, the seesaw. Hey, come on, Hinata, I always wanted to try this. He took her hand, leading her to it. He looked at it confused, not sure how you got it started. Normally he only saw kids while playing it, not how they got on or off. Do you know how it works? Hinata nodded. Why, yes. One goes on first and jumps up. Then the other has to jump onto it when the other part goes down. Oh, okay. Then you go on first then. Hinata got on the smallest one since it looked to be built for kids their age. She had never got to play like this before. Naruto was just so fun to be around. He made her smile and feel happier than she had been in a very long time. Plus, that smile of his somehow always made her feel something, like when you felt the sun on your face on a nice spring day. It was warm and comforting. She only felt like this around her mother. Hinata prepared herself and jumped up. Naruto quickly got on. He barely made it onto it, but he got on. Then he got ready and jumped up. Both children had never been on something like this. The way they rushed up into the air and just stopped and then came back down was a new type of fun for them. Their parents looked on, happy to see their children play like this. It had been a very long time since they started to play, and Hana noticed the time. She walked over to the playing children. Hinata, it's time to get back home now. Why, yes, mother, she said and looked to Naruto. You can get off first. Naruto smiled at her. She nodded and got off. Unfortunately, Naruto was about to get a very important lesson, a lesson in gravity. He hadn't expected to fall faster than the last time. The seat hit the ground hard and he bounced off and landed onto the ground on his back. Hinata gasped and ran over to him, worried. Naruto, are you okay? Ow. Next time I got to remember to be careful. He propped himself up and gave her a smile. Hinata's worried look melted at his smile and she couldn't help but smile back. Then Naruto frowned a bit. He hadn't enjoyed himself like this in a long time and he didn't want to stop, but he knew that her mother had her reasons for going. Hana Hyuga walked up, glad to see the young boy was okay, although she kept a slightly passive face, as was the way of the clan. Hinata, you can say goodbye to your friend, but I can take you back here and you two can play again another day. Naruto blinked a few times. He never had a real friend his own age before. He looked at Hinata then. Hey Hinata, are we, friends now? Hinata blushed as her fingers were interlaced. The truth was she liked Naruto and she did want to be his friend. She looked at her mother with hope-filled eyes and her mother only smiled at her. Hinata brightened up looking at him and gave a shy smile and nodded her head. Naruto's return smile was large and full of happiness. He finally had made a friend, a real friend. I'd like to have you as a friend. Hey dad, you think Hinata-chan can come over and play sometime? Hinata was surprised again. She had never had a friend to just go over and play with. If this was what a friend was like, then she enjoyed it. She hoped that Naruto's father said yes, and that her mother would allow Naruto to come to the Hyuga compound sometime. For the first time in her short life, Hinata felt like there was something to look forward to. Well, I don't see why not, that as if Hyuga-sama here doesn't mind. Kakashi smiled at Naruto, ruffling his wild hair. I think something can be arranged, she told the group. They said their goodbyes and she led her daughter back holding her hand. She could see how happy Hinata was and was glad that her daughter finally found a friend in Naruto. She of course would talk to her husband about this, but she knew how to get him to see her way. After all, what kind of wife couldn't keep their husband in line? So Hinata, what do you think of Naruto? He seems like a nice boy, she asked her daughter. I like him. He's fun, and makes me happy. She blushed looking at the ground. That's good then Hinata, she said to her. Uchiha compound. Fugaku Uchiha wasn't very happy, which was hard to see at times. He usually wore such a hard expression on his face. But things were not going well. First off, someone in the group had hired those damn ninjas to take out the boy last year. He hadn't sanctioned that, and now the boy would be watched even more closely. His people had told of how Anbu members were making passes over the Hitaki home now, and even at times would make a pass by the demon boy when they saw him. He knew it was the Hokage's doing. The old man had to have gone senile to let that boy live. He was a danger to the entire village. If the seal on that boy failed, the demon could get loose, and then it would be the end for this village and everyone in it. They had lost a few promising Uchihas that day, and he knew that if the demon got out again, there would be no stopping its rampage. He signed as he walked through the large home. He looked out a doorway, seeing his oldest son Itachi overlooking his younger brother's training. Anime and manga. Sasuke, even though his own son so far hadn't shown the same level of talent as his older brother, it would seem that his youngest child did not measure up. It was a pity, but then again, to match Itachi would take a miracle. His oldest son was a prodigy. Not any other clan could lay claim to such a ninja, not even their rivals, the Hyuga clan. But there were other things that worried him. Over the years, Itachi was getting more and more distant. It was getting harder and harder to understand what was going through his son's head, and it was starting to worry him. He had no idea why, but it did, and the more time passed, the more worried he what Itachi would do. He wasn't sure what, but it was obvious that he didn't have the same respect for the clan like other Uchiha members did. In fact, he kept his distance from the clan, all except for his best friend Shisui Uchiha. Fugaku would send for the boy. He would order him to keep an eye on Itachi, and report anything out of the ordinary. He knew the boy was loyal to the clan first, then to his own best friend, so he didn't have to fear about the boy telling Itachi. He watched as Sasuke missed a target with a kunai. Fugaku sighed and hung his head a bit. Why couldn't his youngest son have the same talent as his older brother? He walked away wondering if maybe Sasuke would be better off with a life outside of being a ninja. After all, it was obvious that unless things got any worse, Itachi would lead the clan. Sasuke had seen his father there, and when he saw how disappointed he was in him, Sasuke felt a deep shame. All his young life he just wanted to make his father proud, so why couldn't he do it? Why was his brother so much better than he was? Young Sasuke just didn't understand why he felt like he was so weak all the time. He knew that his family was supposed to be the strongest there was, but if he was weak, what did that make him? You shouldn't let what he thinks get you down, little brother, Itachi said, walking over to him. He doesn't know everything or what real power is. Keep it and prove him wrong. It had been a couple of months since Naruto met Hinata, and even though he hadn't made any more friends, she was still his best friend. They would play together all the time, they would meet in that park, and once Hinata's mother even brought her over to play. They had played in Naruto's large backyard. It wasn't as big as Hinata's home, not that Naruto would know since he hadn't been there yet. But to him it was huge. Hinata herself was better for having a friend in her life, and she looked forward with her time with Naruto. He was always smiling and making her feel happy. One time an older boy had been picking on her and she was reduced to tears. The next thing she knew, Naruto had tackled the older boy and was beating him up for making her cry. The fight hadn't been that long and the older boy was sent running, but Hinata had never had anyone stand up for her like that. She was thankful for someone to stand up for her like that. Naruto just didn't like to see Hinata cry, and he was bullied himself now and then, but if was him he could take it, but not when they went after his friend. Kakashi himself was noticing how sometimes Naruto got into fights with some boys. Sometimes he would find him with a bloody lip, or dirt and bruises on his son's body. Nothing major, but he didn't like that fact that other kids were picking on him. Unfortunately, he knew for a fact that the older generation by now all knew or knew enough about Naruto. He caught some people glaring at him, so Kakashi glared back. He didn't want to think what would happen to Naruto if he wasn't around to take care of him. But he kept up Naruto's training, and he had to admit Naruto had a healthy work ethic. He kept on going sometimes until he just dropped. He was kind of proud of that. With some help he could become a great ninja one day. After all, given who his biological father and adopted father, it was no surprise if Naruto became a legend in his own right. It was king of nice to know that the Hatake name through Naruto would continue on. Besides, with his busy life, he was doubtful that he would find a woman to settle down with and have any more kids. Sure, he went out now and then, but nothing serious. Some were just some women that wanted to unmask him, not that they ever did. Others wanted to know if the rumors about him were true, although with the rumors that he found out, Kakashi was surprised since he was sure half the things he hadn't tried yet. But now there was another problem. He was being sent on a mission now and he couldn't find Iruka to see if he could take care of Naruto. He was meeting with the Hokage now to see about the mission, and he had no idea on who to ask to look after Naruto. He wanted to make sure that he was well looked after, of course. He entered into the Hokage's room bowing slightly. "I'm here, Hokage-sama." "Ah, good Kakashi. I need you to go out and scout out the border. I've had reports of a group of missing nin that are from rock that is going around the borders. They stick close by raiding villages and then sneak across into the border of a country that is not on friendly terms with the one they just pillaged." Kakashi nodded. "So any pressuring ninjas will have trouble. Say if we went into Cloud territory, they might just attack us using the rogue group as a cover to settle old scores." He had to admit it was dangerous but a cunning plan, plus the fact that he was most likely going to lead Anbu group meant these had to be A-class ninjas or above. This was definitely going to be a bit difficult to do. He was already making some plans on taking with him a backup squad just in case. "Before I go, I need the usual favor," he said, and the old man nodded. "I take it Iruka isn't free this time?" the old man said, smoking his pipe. Kakashi nodded. "And you know my rule on Guy, no more than 5 days alone with Naruto. Ever. So I need someone trustworthy and can handle things. You remember what happened last year with Naruto? I want to make sure who is left can handle things." That in Naruto, he silently said to himself, with all the little tricks he had shown Naruto in the year his son was getting pretty devious and had seemed to like pulling pranks now and then. The Hokage was deep in thought on who to trust. He knew that word that Naruto held the demon had circulated over the years. Thankfully no one had told the younger generation, but still it seemed that certain people were so afraid of the boy they would bend if not break his decree. He was wondering who to trust when the door was slammed open and a very pissed off Kunoichi walked into the room. The hell is this? Anko demanded, throwing down a letter. A simple C-rank mission. I didn't bust Mito make Jornan just to do this, old man. Normally a person in his position would take offense to that, but he only smiled. He knew that Anko wouldn't like that, but honestly it had been the only mission at the time and she was getting restless. I'm sorry Anko, but there aren't any more. It was either that or I give it to a genin team. She sat down with her arms crossed with a pout on her face. She needed some action. She was going stir crazy with nothing to do. Plus she needed to prove herself, that she wasn't some failure, that she had the skills. She then noticed the Anbu with the mask and she felt like she had seen that mask before. But after a while all the Anbu looked alike to her. See something you like? She grinned at him hoping for a reaction. He just shrugged, which only pissed her off. It was then that the Hokage got an idea. Well Anko, I do have a rank B mission that came in that you might need to handle. Oh. Now she was interested and didn't notice how Kakashi suddenly stiffened. It's a bodyguard position. Sounds okay to me. She shrugged. You can't mean. Kakashi was about to disagree. He had nothing against her. Hell, he actually respected her. You got something against me? She asked him with a dangerous tone and a glint in her eye that said if he said the wrong thing, she'd cut off his balls and feed them to him. After their first meeting he had looked up her career now and then and he was pleased with her abilities. Sure, she had some unique personality quirks, but then so did most of the best ninja. He knew at times it was just a coping mechanism. He signed knowing that if anyone could protect Naruto, this woman could do that, but who would protect Naruto from her? Very well. The Anbu will show you the way, Anko. The old man grinned, knowing full well Anko's reaction to her being manipulated into this. Anko followed the ninja through the city. He was pretty quiet, but that was Anbu for you. She followed him to a pretty nice home, traditional style, two-story home with a large rock wall enclosing the area. A very large backyard was also seen as well. She looked around the place. It was pretty nice and wondered who lived in this home. She got her answer in the form of a rushing blonde boy that latched onto the other ninja. Dad, you're back already. The little boy smiled and Anko's eyes widened. This was the ninja's son. She looked at the young boy, blonde hair, blue eyes that she swore she had never seen on another person, and there were these strange little marks on his face. He looked up curiously at her and she was wondering just what the hell was going on here. Hey Dad, who's the lady? He asked. The man laughed and pulled off his mask, and if Anko was shocked before, now she really was. It was Kakashi. She hadn't seen him since that one mission, and now here she was in his home and meeting his son. Although she remembered that he was adopted, so that was why the little boy looked nothing like him. This is Anko. She's going to be looking after you while I'm gone, Naruto. What? She screamed out. I thought this was a bodyguard duty. It is. You're guarding him. He smiled at her. It's babysitting. I am not a baby. Naruto shouted back at her. Shut it, kid. Make me ugly. What did you call me? You heard me. Kakashi was wondering if he should rethink his position on Guy, at this rate. He pulled Anko aside while she screamed bloody murder at Naruto while his son only gave it back right at her. It was kind of funny seeing a Jonin arguing with a little boy, but after they were alone she continued on with her ranting. First at him, then at the Hokage, and then at anything that came to mind. It took 15 minutes for her to calm down. You calm now? He asked, leaning against a wall. No. You at least going to stop screaming? Yeah. Good. He pushed himself off the wall. Now listen, Anko, this is important. Were you given the file on the Kyuubi when you were made Jonin? Yeah, it was about how, oh, him, she realized that it was Naruto that had the demon in him. The file said that the boy had been named Naruto and that he had 6 marks on his face. It went on saying he had been adopted by a ninja but by who had been blacked out. The only reason Kakashi would ask about that file was if Naruto was the container for that demon. Kakashi nodded, impressed with how fast she got it. Yes, and because of that many view him with fear or hatred. In fact, last year there is an assassination attempt the last time I left for a long mission. So you can understand why I want someone I either trust or someone powerful enough to be trusted with my son's life. Anko looked into his one eye and she could see he was dead serious about this. He means a lot to you, huh? He may not be of my blood, but in every other sense he's my son. I've watched over him, cared for him, I've seen his first steps, his first words have been there for his entire life. I know what it's like to be alone in the world and I wanted to make sure he never felt that pain. Although I've not done as good a job as I would have liked. She looked at him confused, not knowing that the only people in Naruto's life was the Hokage who visited him now and then, Kakashi, his uncle, Guy, Iruka, the 2 people that ran his favorite ramen stand, and finally Hinata, his only friend. He wanted more for his son, but with certain adults poisoning the minds of the younger generation, it wasn't easy for Naruto to make friends. Anko wanted to ask a bit more, but the look she saw made her rethink things. She guessed that Naruto did deserve to be protected, even if he was a brat, he was still just a kid. Fine. But I'm not happy about this, just so you know. I know. Anko. Thank you. He told her. They went into the other room and Anko tried to get used to the fact she was going to be a glorified babysitter for the little brat. She looked down at the little blonde, wondering how she got herself roped into this. Later, Kakashi had left for his mission, leaving Anko a few things that she should know about, like Naruto's bedtime, not to feed him sugar and other things. There was a list, she just scanned through it and put it away. She took the time to look around the house, it was kind of nice, although kind of bland. She found a nice training room at least, and it would give her something to do later on. She found Naruto sitting in the living room, coloring and watching some kids' show. She sighed, she really didn't want to watch something like that, and as she sat on the couch she took the remote and changed it. Hey, I was watching that, Naruto said to her. Life is tough, so get used to it, she said offhandedly. Please. He looked up at her with one of those cute little pout. With his large blue eyes and cute little face, most people wouldn't be able to stand to look at that for more than a minute before caving in, and Naruto knew this since he used it on his dad a lot. That is when his dad knew well enough not to look at him when he tried it. Anko, however, just stared blankly at him and turned to her TV. Sorry, that doesn't work on me, but nice try. Naruto let the face fall. Meanie. Brat. Old hag. What did you call me? I'm not even 20 yet. Really? Naruto tilted his head. I thought you were 30. 30. By this time Naruto ran off laughing, with a pissed off Anko hot on his heels with said little boy laughing. Over with Kakashi. He and his group were traveling through the large trees that for some reason were always around in the Fire Country and a lot of the others. It was odd that how there were so many all over the place, with the exception of the country of Wind, given it was a desert. Some thought it might be from people like the first Hokage, who with his specialty in using tree type of jutsus, but Kakashi put it aside. His team stopped for a moment to catch their breath and to make plans on where to go to next. He sent Owl and Crane out first, while he was with Falcon and Ox. It was odd to always call each other by the mask they wore, but that was Anbu for you. They kept their identities secret from most, although Kakashi was starting to think he might want to go back to being a Jonin. Besides, these missions were starting to take a toll. That was the life in Anbu. You did the jobs that most didn't have the stomach for, but the downside was what it did to you. You could only do this for so long before it destroyed you. Images of his father suddenly got into his head and he quickly put that away. That was another reason he was thinking of getting out of this. He had enough saved up now, and going back to Pay he would be able to handle, and Naruto was older now. He didn't want to end up like his dad and leave Naruto alone in the world like he had been. He sighed, hoping that Anko and Naruto were getting along. "Area, you alright?" Ox asked him. "Just worried about my son is all. I hope he isn't causing too much trouble." What could a kid possibly do? Kakashi actually laughed a bit at that. He picks things up fast, he's already getting good at the basic taijutsu skills, and I've been teaching him a few other things like lock picking and how to get out of ropes. Ox looked at him for a moment. Why would you teach a kid that? He just shrugged. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Hitaki home. Now then, you just keep here and I'll let you go after an hour, Anko said, standing up and wiping her brow. "Let me go, you big meanie," Naruto yelled out, who was at this time tied to a chair. And to complete it, she gagged him lightly as he glared up at her. "Hey, be thankful I'm not into spanking, plus I've been known to do a hell of a lot worse, kid." She gave him one of those grins she reserved to scare the crap out of people, and it seemed to work well on bratty kids too. "There, now just let Auntie Anko have 1 hour of peace and quiet," she said, and closed the door. She didn't get 2 feet when the sounds of thumping and thrashing was heard. She sighed and rolled her eyes. "I should get paid more for this," she muttered. Anko was finally enjoying the quiet. She was on the couch just watching the TV and zoning out. It was half an hour later that she suddenly realized something. It was quiet, too quiet. In fact, the muffled sounds of Naruto were suddenly gone. Now she got a very bad feeling about this and carefully got up and went to the room she left him in. She opened the door a bit and looked in. Her eyes widened at the sight of the empty chair and ropes on the floor. She burst into the room. How the hell did, wham. Anko felt something hit her head. She had been so surprised she let her guard down and a small sack of flour that had been rigged to the door hit her on the head. She was now white as a ghost with a large vein on her head. "That little brat is dead." Sounds of laughter and running feet told her where the soon-to-be dead boy was. She ran after him and saw him take a corner. She was going to make sure the little brat stayed in place and raised one of her arms. From under her trench coat a long green snake shot out. She saw it go after the boy and take the same corner. Then she heard lots of snapping noises and she stopped dead in her tracks. She knew by now that Naruto had a tendency for traps, and she wasn't going to fall into another one. She pressed herself up against the wall and carefully looked around it. Her jaw dropped at the sight of the hallway covered in mouse traps on the floor. She saw her snake was caught in several of them before it disappeared in a cloud of smoke. "It's not possible. It just isn't. Me, the great Anko Mitarashi, who was trained under that snake bastard Orochimaru, who scares the crap out of seasoned jonins, is getting her kicked by a damn toddler." She screamed in her mind. If this got out, she would be a laughing stock, so she resolved that this kid was going down and hard. Naruto had been hiding for the past 10 minutes and was getting bored. The crazy lady didn't seem to be following him. He was hiding out in the laundry room under a pile of clothes, thinking she wouldn't want to check in the dirty pile. But he was getting bored with this now. Although she was crazy, she was kind of fun too. He never had an adult like this. His dad could ground him and Uncle Guy usually didn't have it in him to play on Naruto's level. Meaning Naruto liked to do anything to win and Guy was a bit too straightforward. Anko, however, seemed to be like him. She would do whatever it took to win. So now, FLLY bored out of his mind, Naruto decided to take the fight back to her. He started to sneak to his room where he put supplies for this in hope that the crazy lady wouldn't find him. He didn't see anyone, so when he got to his room he felt he was safe. He opened his door, and another sack of flour fell only now hitting him. Ah! What the? Laughing was heard and he spun around to see Anko there. She still had flour over her body but was mostly cleaned up. She stood there laughing at him. Serves you right, brat. How do you like a taste of your own medicine? Naruto scowled but then grinned. This was going to be more fun than he thought. Good, but you know I have to get even now, right, crazy lady? Anko got a grin on her face that most people would be creeped out by. Oh, you think you can take me on, brat? Naruto responded by quickly closing his door. Anko took only 3 large steps to get to it, and when she got in, she saw Naruto dive under his bed. She put her hands on her hips, actually disappointed. Come on, I thought you could think better than that. She waited for him to come out but lost patience after 30 seconds. Come on out already. No answer. Okay, then we do it the fun way. She took the bed and lifted it up and frowned at the fact no one was under the small bed. She then noticed that the panel that was on the wall was removed. The little boy had an escape route, most likely from Kakashi, to ensure Naruto had an escape route if the house was ever attacked. Well, damn, Anko said, lowering the bed. Looks like the fun was going to continue. Well, despite everything she had to admit, this was anything but boring. Naruto was trying to make his way as quietly as he could through the house. Thankfully he knew the home better than Anko did and knew all the great hiding spots with his games of hide and seek with Hinata. He managed to get into the backyard and decided to make a run for the really big tree and hide out there for a bit. He only made it 5 feet from the door when a spray of really cold water hit him. When he stopped, he glared up to the roof where Anko was with the hose. Point for me, brat. Naruto grinned at her, and the rest of the day went on like this, with the two of them going in an all-out war to one-up the other. Anko got in a few good shots. She once managed to pin him to a wall with her kunai through the edges of his shirt. Only when she took her eyes off him he slipped out of his shirt and ran off. Naruto then got her back with greasing part of a floor, so when she chased him she slipped and crashed into a wall. Naruto ended up running form snakes, kunai and a few low-level fire attacks, but he gave it back just as much as he could. By now Naruto broke out his water guns and had soaked Anko in water that had ice in the tank, so it was really, really cold. The outcry she gave was well worth it. When he lost one of this guns in fleeing, Anko picked it up and the two ended up in a water fight in the backyard. Both of them were wet, muddy and covered in various things such as flour, sugar, feathers, and paint. Both of them, by the time the sun was going down, were laying on the ground panting, feeling very tired, sore in some areas and just overall drained. Anko couldn't believe she felt so drained by just a kid. She usually only felt like this during extreme training sessions. Naruto was looking up at the darkening sky with a large smile on his face. Despite everything, it had been really fun. So, who won? Anko couldn't take it anymore. Here she was, a Jonin, and had spent most of the day going around chasing a kid like she was a kid herself, and he thought it all a game. Truth was, she never had much of a childhood and she never really got to play much as a child, and she found that she had fun herself. It was a total surprise for her, but she actually had fun. It was so twisted that to her it actually made sense. It might not for most others, but for her it did. Don't know and don't care. Come on. We need to clean up and then I can order some food. Can we have ramen? He asked. As long as I can have some dango too. What's dango? She looked shocked at the boy as they got up, and then she smiled. I've got so much to teach you about the finer things in life, and dango is at the top of the list to me. That night, Naruto woke up. It was late in the night by what the clock said. He yawned and felt his dry throat. He knew he couldn't sleep with it like this and grumbled as he got out of bed. He pushed the covers and, grabbing his stuffed fox, Mr. Foxy, he went into the halls. He went for the bathroom rubbing his eye. It was dark but he knew his home very well by now. Then he stopped hearing something. He moved to his dad's room where the Anko lady was sleeping. He pushed the door open a bit and looked inside. Anko was on the bed but was tossing and turning and muttering to herself. Naruto knew it was a nightmare. He had seen his dad have a few as well, but his dad never liked to talk about them. So young Naruto climbed into his dad's bed and shook the woman awake. "Hey crazy lady, wake up." He froze as she shot up and pressed a kunai to his throat. He froze in that instant and the look in her eyes were of a colder. But she realized what was going on, her eyes widened and she quickly dropped the weapon away. "Oh god kid, I'm sorry." Naruto was still a bit scared but put it away. Ever since that day the two ninjas had tried to him, he promised not to be scared again. He noticed how sad she looked for a moment looking at the wall in front of her. "Bad dream huh?" he asked. Anko nodded her head. She didn't want to tell him what exactly. She could barely remember them anyway, but it was all the same. The darkness, the cries of pain, horrible images, people twisted around into horrible images, pain. But she remembered the darkness, the loneliness the most. She noticed the kid was still there in his orange PJs looking at her. "What? You want Mr. Foxy to sleep with?" he asked honestly, like it was the answer to her problems. "Huh?" She looked confused. He handed her a stuffed fox. "This is Mr. Foxy. He's my favorite toy. I always sleep with him, and when I get nightmares I hug him tightly. I even give him to my dad when he gets nightmares too." Anko had to grin at how strange it all was. She wasn't sure what was more funny. A child trying to console her on things he couldn't possibly understand, or the thought of the great Sharingan Kakashi slept with a stuffed fox when he had nightmares. She tried not to laugh at that image, but it was pretty funny. What is with this family? Do they go around trying to make others feel better or just me? She thought to herself, remembering how Kakashi had talked to her a year ago. It was a long time, but she still remembered that night. She looked down at the kid and smiled, not one of her smiles she used to scare people, but one of her rare and true smiles. "Thanks, brat." He smiled up at her since she didn't mean the word in anger but had said it in a gentle tone. "Night crazy lady." He jumped off, going to get his drink of water.